Hi, everybody. Thanks very much. Again, my name is Tristan Goodman. I'm the Vice President for Corporate Planning Enterprise Projects. I'm also the fellow responsible for bringing in all of this work into and building this new agency. So there's two pieces to this. There's transition and transformation. Transition is about making sure that we're building the new regulator while keeping the actual system stable for all stakeholders involved within the regulatory framework in Alberta related to upstream oil and gas activity, hydrocarbon activity in general. So that is about, as I think most of you know, this has been done in a couple of phases. There was the water that we're doing right now, aer.ca and the Water Act, which includes financial liability. It also includes reclamation and remediation. And before that, back in November, we looked at public lands and geophysical. All the energy statutes are also brought into that. So that's just sort of setting the stage. The second piece is then transformation. This is not right now to talk about transformation. That is a much broader piece. That is going to involve changes, really fundamental changes probably to the upstream oil and gas regulatory system. And that's going to have an impact on everybody in this room, no matter whether you're from industry or you're interested for another reason. A couple of points just briefly. There's three agencies coming together, ERCB, Environment, and Sustainable Resource Development. That's going to form the new agency of the Alberta Energy Regulator. It is a new agency. It is not simply a tack on to one of the other agencies. There's a new governance structure. There's a new general high-level piece of legislation referred to as RETA and Responsible Energy Development Act. And I take it a lot of you will have looked through that. But that's just to sort of generally set the stage for what this is. The point here is that you've got about 75 or 100 years of history across these agencies. There's a lot of positive work that we want to maintain that all three of those agencies are doing. What you're trying to do, though, is each agency has positives, and obviously each agency has some things it needs to improve on. This is the opportunity really to do that. I'm not going to get into this. I know most of you have heard me talk about this. Similar mandate to the other three agencies. There are some differences, though. One big one is public land management. We now have 2 land managers on the land base. This is what does result in challenges, and we've got to make sure we are aligned between ourselves and then the other sectors, which are with ESRD. So there's a lot of work going on right now between ourselves and ESRD to make sure that we have constant alignment as we go forward between the various sectors. A couple of key points. Public safety remains the key priority here, as it has for a lot of the regulators, particularly on the ERCB side. That was one of its main mandates. Environmental protection, it depends on which regulator you're previously looking at, but generally this is a significant focus of the new AER. It has a lot of responsibility for the regulatory or the policy assurance side of things, and so this is going to be a big piece. And I think today RecRem is a good example of one of those pieces. The other aspects you'll see is there is going to be an increased focus on enforcement. This is high-risk activities. We're not talking about every low-risk activity that has to be regulated. We all have a scarcity of resources. We're focused really on the high risk, making sure that the mandate that has been given to us by the democratically elected officials is fulfilled, and that we have actually an industry watchdog that is making sure enforcement is occurring where appropriate. So you will see a discussion on that. And for those that were here yesterday, I think there was a sort of a fairly good overview of what that looks like. Just very quickly, and for those that, I apologize for those that have seen this a couple of times, or in some cases more than a couple of times, I think now. The reality is this is a key figure. The point of this is to sort of reflect the AER does not function in a vacuum or in isolation. It's part of a broader system. It takes its direction, just like all of us do from somewhere. And in this case, we have partners, and we also have some folks that provide us information or support us as we move forward. So the key to understanding this is government sets policy. That is, what are you allowed to do? What are you not allowed to do? Where, how, generally high level. So energy development is acceptable in many areas in the province of Alberta. That is a policy decision. The regulator's job is then to go about how do you go about doing that. And there is a gray area, and that's where collaboration has to happen. So sometimes the policy setters need additional information from the regulator. Sometimes the regulator may see something that is missing, and then we would talk, in this case, to another group here called the Policy Management Office. That group really has two functions. The first is they have to coordinate policy between government departments, particularly where there could be conflicting policies, such as environment, energy development. There's always a natural trade-off that has to occur there. And they're responsible to ensure that that is actually being developed, and that those trade-offs, if they need to exist or where you could have differences, those are sorted through so the regulator can actually be effective and be efficient. The Environmental Monitoring Agency, I'm not going to touch on this. It's the one piece on this area or in this little diagram that is not fully up and running yet. But really what they're looking at is the overall or macro sort of regional landscape picture of usually environmental components, but not always. They're interested in, okay, all of us in this room, we're interested often in a well by well or a license by license piece. These folks are interested in, okay, what is the cumulative total impact of that? Are we healthy within this area? The last one, and it will affect many of you in this room, is the Aboriginal Consultation Office. And I'll just point out, Bruce, is Bruce Gladue here? You've already, okay, great, just checking, because that's a key piece. What this is this is a separate agency. It is fairly new. They do have staff in place, though, and I think they're continuing to staff up. This deals with really the government of Alberta's constitutional duty to consult with First Nations Aboriginals in general. And so this is not part of the AER, but it is important that we work with them. We talk to them on, quite frankly, probably 2-3 times a week to make sure that there's alignment between these two agencies. So if there's additional questions on that, we're certainly happy to talk about that. Finally, I'll just mention 2 quick pieces on this. We do have a new governance structure. We also have a new org design. As I think those that have been here before will remember, 3 pieces to the governance structure. In other words, how the organization is generally divvied up, managed, run. The first piece is we have a board of directors, very similar to a corporate board of directors, in the sense that they are not full-time, sort of nose in, fingers out. They're generally making sure that, is there a strategy in place? Are the broad issues being considered? They meet right now once a month, and they'll probably go to once a quarter. So meeting once a quarter for 3 hours, actually, I apologize, I was late. I just came from actually that meeting. They're meeting right now, and they're looking over the new sort of draft strategic plan. So just like a normal governance board would. The bulk of the organization is in operations, and I'll quickly touch on that. It's broken down into 2 areas, really, 2 main sort of throughput areas, and then additional sort of areas to assist either externally or internally within the organization. And then there is the hearing commissioners or commissioners, and their job is around the quasi-judicial process. They, as a lot of you will know from the ERCB, they used to do a lot of work on hearings. There is a sort of goal here to have an increased focus on ADR, another form of dispute resolution that is less adversarial, less win-lose, and more win-win. So the hearing commissioners will still conduct hearings or inquiries, but they also will undertake other activities. Just briefly, for most of you working on a daily basis, the 2 big chunks you're going to need to know are the strategy and regulatory or the operations. Strategy and regulatory I won't get into. They tend to deal with broader future state issues. So if we have a factory and someone wants to build a new factory or make mass change to that factory, this is sort of the group as an analogy that would be doing that work. And then the actual running of the current state, daily operations, is in the operations area. That operations area is now matrixed. So there are 3 streams vertically. That is oil and gas sector, in situ sector, and mining sector. And the mining sector does include coal. And then the bulk of the organization is in the horizontal. And they are responsible for the day-to-day specific authorizations, specific rec-rem certificates, specific field inspections, things of that nature. So what the sectors do, the vertical streams, is they do more broad work. So if there's a pocket of authorizations and we see a continuous issue around those authorizations, that type of authorization, they would try to make small improvements in that system to make it more effective or to make it more efficient or to increase transparency to make sure folks actually can see what we're doing. I think that's it. I got one more slide I'll just briefly mention. I'm not going to go through this. This is a vision statement, as all of you I'm sure are aware. These are aspirational statements. This is sort of something we strive for. The reality is the key here is best in class. We have a mandate. We're clearly going to be around that mandate, but the trick is best in class. This has yet to be defined. I won't mislead anyone here. The trick to this will be to define what does best in class mean, and to a large extent, you're going to see us probably coming back to many of you in the audience and many others across actually the province and maybe even internationally to say, we want to be the best in class. What does that actually specifically mean? And then can we put some public performance measures against that? So folks can actually see visibly, are we hitting those goals or are we not? And if we're not, then what changes can we make? So that's the key with this statement. Okay, thank you very much for your time, and I look forward to hearing your questions. That's really the key to this, to really get into the questions. But before that, we're going to just nip through the panel to make sure we have a good understanding of what we're talking about. So I look forward to hearing what you folks have to say. Thanks.